Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, April the 11th, and in 3 short hours, a special prosecutor will announce criminal charges against George Zimmerman in the shooting death of Trayvon Martin. We start with breaking news on a major development in the case of Trayvon Martin, 44 days since the teenager was shot and killed. NBC News, quoting an unnamed law enforcement official, is reporting the special prosecutor will charge George Zimmerman. The official does not know what the charges will be, only that the announcement will come within the next 3 hours. This would mark a significant turning point in the 6-week-old story, a case investigators had closed the book on until a national outcry asked how Zimmerman, a neighborhood watch volunteer, was allowed to walk free after admitting that he shot an unarmed 17-year-old boy. The announcement is one of the most hotly anticipated legal decisions in recent memory, as Martin's family and friends, the city of Sanford, and Martin's supporters across the country wait to hear whether there will be justice for a boy and his family. Let's go right now to NBC's Kerry Sanders, who's live in Florida. Kerry, what is the very latest on what we expect to happen for the rest of the day?
Well, the special prosecutor has now indicated the time, as you pointed out, and the location of where this news conference will take place, 6 o'clock in Jacksonville. She, of course, is the state attorney in Jacksonville, which is about a 2.5-hour drive from where we are here in Sanford. She will make her announcement at 6 o'clock to allow certain reporters in there from each news organization. They had put into place earlier today credentialing, checking the security of those who will be coming in, and limiting the number of people who will be inside the room with her. It's unclear whether she will take questions. It's possible she will not take any questions because, of course, this is the beginning of a legal proceeding. She may simply make a statement and move on. We hope, of course, that she takes some questions. As this is unfolding, of course, there is the question of where is 28-year-old George Zimmerman. As we heard from his former attorneys yesterday, the 2 attorneys who dropped out of their representation because they say they had lost contact with their client, all we know from them is that they believe George Zimmerman has left the state. They do believe he is in the United States. I've spoken to my sources at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the investigative agency that was helping the prosecutor gather evidence, as well as having the authority to track somebody. And even though George Zimmerman was never told that he could not leave the state, I'm told from my sources that the FDLE is confident that they will be able to locate George Zimmerman if that is needed. Again, it's possible that we will hear something different, although the greatest anticipation with some of the reporting from Pete Williams, who has been in contact with federal law enforcement officers, is that there will be charges. The one charge that we know that will not be on the table here is first-degree murder, because in Florida,
I'm afraid we've lost our signal there with Kerry, but thank you for the moment, Kerry. I wonder if I can bring in Jamie Floyd, who's joining us now, who's a lawyer and an attorney. Jamie, what's your reaction to the news that after 44 days, this special prosecutor has decided to take action?
Well, as you say, Martin, one of the most hotly awaited legal announcements in recent times, right? Everyone's been waiting 44 days, justice for this young man. And as Kerry was just reporting, I guess we can say alleged suspect, I think that's fair language, is missing. His attorneys having stepped off the case, so that's a big piece of the puzzle here. I think we can expect some charges, and I think this special prosecutor is somewhat courageous to have waived the grand jury and have taken the matter into her own hands, which is what she's done, on the investigation and any case that may go forward.
Right. Now, on the specific issue of where George Zimmerman is, we're told that he made a phone call himself to the special prosecutor,
yeah,
and she refused to talk to him.
Yes.
But do you think that the special prosecutor ensured or asked about where he was at that moment? Do you think she may have bothered to check his whereabouts in order...
She really should not have done anything, Martin. Her obligation when talking with a suspect in a case, a potential defendant, is to make no inquiry at all if an attorney is not present. So my guess is no, she didn't ask, where are you, or anything of the sort, because he was not represented by counsel in making the phone call. I understand he also called Fox News. So this is someone who's behaving rather erratically, and his attorneys feel that they cannot represent him at this time, that he's not participating adequately in his defense, that he's not behaving, as they said, in a way that well represents himself.
Indeed. Let's go to the managing editor of thegrio.com, Joyanne Reid, who's there in Sanford. Joyanne, I wonder if our signal... Oh, yes, there you are. I'm glad. We lost Kerry just now. But what is the atmosphere down there? Because I imagine that news is now beginning to spread. I mean, we've got it immediately, but I guess people in the locality are now beginning to hear that something serious is going to happen today.
Well, Martin, there was already a sense of anticipation, particularly in the black community here in Sanford. There are church services actually planned for this evening in anticipation that something would happen sometime this week. So there'll be a service at 7 p.m. this evening at one of the largest black churches here, where the pastor was already gearing up really to talk to the community about how to react if there were no charges. And so I think there's been a lot of pessimism about people, maybe reacting badly if nothing was done or if charges were not filed. So it will be interesting to see how the mood is in Sanford. And I also have calls in to find out how the mood is, obviously, in Miami, where Trayvon Martin is from, and spoke with the attorney, one of the attorneys for the family. So they are all sort of processing this at the time. And I think everyone's waiting to hear the official word from State Attorney Corey before they react.
Of course. And Joyanne, it's remiss not to mention that George Zimmerman has a reasonable amount of followers and supporters himself.
Indeed. Well, you don't really see that here in Sanford. What you do see is a support base, however small, for Police Chief Bill Lee, the guy who directed the investigation, who's getting a lot of criticism for the way his police force handled the Trayvon Martin shooting. He does have a support base here in Sanford, and you really see more of that. I have yet to see really any pro-Zimmerman sentiment on the ground.
But there has been this story about a police vehicle being shot at, an empty police vehicle, and the sense in which there is some kind of tension. And I was interested that the Reverend Al Sharpton, my colleague, yours as well, said with the family today at this event in D.C. for the National Action Network that the family is not in the business of revenge, but of justice. That if Trayvon's parents can act with dignity, then so can everyone else. And I'm assuming that this will be the message that ministers, pastors in these big churches down there will wish to convey to the community.
Oh, absolutely, Martin. And the big concern of people here is that people who are not from Sanford will use the Trayvon Martin case and the George Zimmerman case as an excuse to sort of wreak havoc on this community from the outside in. You have to understand that the complex where this shooting took place is directly across the street from an elementary school. That police car, that empty car, was parked in the parking lot of this school. So this is a very small community where anything that happens on one block really affects the blocks nearby. So people are concerned that not so much Sanford residents, but people superimposed from outside, these new Black Panthers who number maybe half a dozen of them all over the country, but see this as an opportunity for publicity, or these so-called white supremacists who I frankly have not seen. On the streets of Sanford, you see calm, you see normalcy, but there is a sense that people from outside this community could take advantage of this situation and really harm the community here in Sanford.
That's terrific, Joyanne. Stay with us. I still have Jamie Floyd with us. I want now to go to Goldie Taylor of the Goldie Taylor Project. Goldie, I imagine that many people will be feeling that this, should the prosecutor, as we expect, charge George Zimmerman this evening, that this is the effect of local people, of a community rising up and challenging a decision that was made by law enforcement at the time to literally do nothing and allow this man to walk free.
You know, I certainly believe that the core of the credit for standing up and making their voices heard about this case belongs to the people of Sanford, Florida. It was them who let out a clarion call to the rest of the nation to join forces with them in civil disobedience, to raise their voices on social networks, to take to the streets, to show up in churches, to really talk about why this case wasn't fully investigated from the start and why George Zimmerman has, you know, the glory of being somewhere else other than Florida today. And so as we await the possibility of charges at 6 p.m. tonight, I think there is a fair amount, you know, of uneasiness, a fair amount of skepticism that, you know, this case will, you know, really follow the rails of justice until it's, you know, until its worthy conclusion.
Indeed. Jamie, one of the issues with this case has been the fact that the police appear to have conducted what could only be described as a fairly poor investigation. The individual himself, the shooter, was not subjected to toxicology tests. Yes. We don't know if he'd been drinking or had been taking drugs, yet we know the corpse was toxicology tested. We don't even know if there were proper ballistic tests done on Trayvon's clothing, on the clothing of George Zimmerman.
Well, what this case, I think, points up is there have been so many cases over the course of history, Martin, going back, of course, to the Emmett Till case. And I think so many people think of Emmett Till when they think of Trayvon. Many cases between then and now that we never have heard about. Cases in which law enforcement has failed in its duty. And here, perhaps, was another case in which law enforcement has failed. But as Goldie just pointed out, because of the light that has been shined upon this case, then perhaps the proper action will be taken. The question is whether we will end up in a place of justice or not. I do want to say, however, getting back to the point that Joyanne made and the request on the part of the family that we react to whatever announcement is made at 6 o'clock with dignity and composure, and that we begin a dialogue about what needs to happen from this point forward after 6 o'clock, whatever the announcement is, that in the last 44 days, we've reacted, many of us, with emotion and without being informed properly about what the laws are, about what can and cannot be done in this case. This stand your ground law is the fundamental root of the problem in this case. And that's
Jamie,
what needs to be examined here.
Jamie, we have an hour to go through all of these details. Yes. We'll come back to it in a moment. Jamie Floyd, Goldie Taylor and Joyanne Reid, please stay with us. Much more on this breaking news straight ahead.